All right, joining me now is teacher Saara Martika, who teaches 7th, 8th, and 9th grade in Hämeenlinna, Finland, and Dr. Leo Pekkala, the Deputy Director of Finland's National Audiovisual Institute, which oversees national media education. I'm so glad to tell us a little bit, because we're all struggling with this. This is a global issue, so I'm hanging on to threads and scraps. If you're doing something, Saara, in Finland, I would really like to know what that might be. Can you give us some of the tactics that you are using in your classroom to equip these kids to one day be more critical consumers of media?
Yeah, sure. Well, it all starts with the reading skills. You have to know different kind of text types to recognize them. And basically, we just try to give them tools how to navigate in digital world. But basically, just I think, well, we think it's the basic stuff that they need to recognize difference between opinion and a fact, even if it's a nice thing or you like the one who has been published it or something like that. It doesn't mean that it has to be true. You have to think always that why is this have been made? Why is this have been published? Who has done it? What is the central claim? What it's really telling us? Stuff like that. That's how we get started.
Leo, young people obviously we're all vulnerable to online misinformation, but young people are relatively easy to reach and educate through school. Those of us who are not in school are susceptible to misinformation. So Finland has set up programs using libraries as centers in which people who are not students can learn how to identify false and misleading information. Talk to me about the difference in the challenges. Obviously, Saara's got students, so that becomes, a little more focused. What's the different challenges in reaching older communities, and particularly people who might not be tech native, like kids and young adults are?
You're very right there, Ali, that it is a challenge because most of the adult population hasn't received the education that, for example, Saara and her colleagues are providing at school. What we try to do is to work very closely with a number of different non-governmental organizations who work at the grassroots level with different age groups. And we do have a growing senior population who are just retiring from work or have just retired. And they can be very tech savvy as such, but they never received any kind of information or education about media literacy and disinformation and misinformation. But then on the other hand, one thing that makes our task easier is that for a very long time we have had a very good educational system, and all this is based on educational system and good education that has been provided at school.
So, Saara, let me just talk about some of the specifics that you're teaching kids. You were talking about identifying text and discerning between opinion and fact. There's also a video project that you have, right, where your students put things together that allow them to get a sense of how video would be manipulated.
Yes, we do that with the videos and also with just photos. How it's easy just, let something out of the picture. Let something out of from the video. You never know what is in the background, how many takes, for example, it has been made, stuff like that. And also with all those great apps or programs that are helping us to manipulate the information in the video or in picture. It's really, I think it's really essential that they know how to read the picture, kind of, how we call it.
Leo, you mentioned that it all starts with the education. You have a strong public education system in Finland, a lot of neighboring countries like yours also. That's not our strength in America. We have a varied public education system. In some cases, it's very, very good, and in some cases, it's very, very bad. Is that the basis for being able to teach critical thinking and media literacy as it relates to misinformation and disinformation?
I think that's one of the really basic things. Another thing is that while you talk about education, we talk about growing to becoming a member of the citizen, member of the state, and learning to trust the structures that we have. And for that, for example, we have had a media literacy policy, national media literacy policy. And there we see that it's not just only about media literacy, but it's not only about disinformation. Media literacy is about much more. It's about trust to the society, to the politicians, and especially to the media.
Sara, your students are young, they're teens. They're getting into their teen years. To what degree do you meet resistance to this? Are they all open to saying, "Hey, teach me these things so I can become more, a better consumer of information"? Or do you ever get pushback from students who say you're indoctrinating me or let me read what I want to read?
Not really. They are pretty open. Of course, they are critical. Well, they're teenagers. They have to be. I mean, that's the way to learn the world. If you don't ever criticize or question things, you won't learn. But they are pretty open and they're really interested, and they know that they will need these skills. And every time we do a project, for example, we analyze TikTok videos, whatever, they are really into it, and they're a bit surprised about the results that they get from the videos, for example. And we do it also that they do their own educational whatever videos, and then other students analyze them and what kind of messages or hidden agendas, whatever in the background they're finding. And I think they find it useful, so they're pretty open to it. But of course, they are teenagers, so they question.
So the interesting thing, Leo, is if you have this program which starts in school, and obviously this program that you described for older adults, how do you measure success over time? This has been in place for 10 years. What does success look like on this front, and how do you measure it?
It's a very difficult thing to measure as in numbers. So what we have to look at are for example, the research that shows that Finnish population believes and trusts into government. They trust the media. They trust the newspapers a lot. And what we are thinking is that it's not important to fight against the minority, the small minority who are against everything that the government says, for example. But we need to strengthen the majority that believes into the government and trusts in the government. So that is really important, but it is extremely difficult to measure in numbers. We have to look at different ways of how the society is working and what kind of discussion we have in public.
It's a great discussion. I really appreciate the two of you taking the time to talk to us. Sara Martika is a 7th and 9th grade teacher, and Leo Pekkala is the Deputy Director of the National Audiovisual Institute in Finland.